of ATOMEXPO 2014 about nuclear energy condition for energy stability. To start with this session, let me introduce to you Mr. Sergei Kiriyenko. I think everybody knows him as Director General of the state corporation Rosatom. And I have to say that not only he is leading Rosatom to become one of the leaders in nuclear technology around the world, I have seen myself directly that he is also a very good skipper of sailboats, and I have to congratulate to him for that. Some of you enjoyed yesterday the regatta, which was a great pleasure for us. The weather was fantastic. That is another indication on how well things are organized here in Russia. So with that, let me give the floor to Sergei Kiriyenko for his keynote speech.
Thank you, dear Mr. Ichivari. Thank you, dear colleagues, dear speakers, dear guests. I would like to say some words on behalf of the organizers of this forum, primarily the words of thanks. I'd like to thank you for your participation in the ATOMEXPO forum and to welcome here so many high authority professionals and leaders, high-flown leaders. It's a great honor to us, and I'm very glad that many participants of ATOMEXPO come here every year. And during our meetings today, we used to recall our past experience of joint work over the past years. The fact that ATOMEXPO is now a high authority and renowned organizer of professional community allows not only to hold bilateral meetings, but also to discuss the current trends in the global nuclear energy sector, also to identify the priorities. And I'd like to note that the high esteem that is given here by the professional community has been confirmed many times in the past. I used to recall that in 2012, or 2 years ago, when there was a vote at the forum, the participants made a conclusion that in the coming years, the syndrome will be overcome, the syndrome, Fukushima NPP syndrome, after the earthquake. And I would say that this projection has come true. This year, as reported by IAEA, 72 nuclear plants are under construction, which is many times more than a year ago. The optimistic projection of IAEA says that by 2030 there will be 727 megawatt of nuclear power generation units. That is twice as many as currently. There is another projection. Last year, when there was a vote here at the forum, a projection was made that the progress of the nuclear energy sector will be shifted geographically, with a larger share to be taken over by the Asia-Pacific region. And it's currently well visible, while more than 50% of the operating NPPs in the world is accounted for by Western Europe and the United States. A lot more than 50% of all the NPPs under construction are in the Asia-Pacific region. Another conclusion that can be drawn over the past years is the changing requirements to the global energy sector from the customers, the clients who order NPP construction, irrespective whether governments other counterparts or companies. Of course, after the Fukushima NPP tragedy, these requirements are top priority. They are not debatable. They are mandatory for implementation. The ever more importance is being taken by commercial requirements, apart from safety, political importance of nuclear energy sector development to raise it to another higher level by any country. Ever more importance is given to competitiveness. competitive. This is another projection we made some years ago at the ATOMEXPO forum, that an ever more importance will be given to comprehensive offers, not only disintegrated unit-by-unit orders, but also package orders and offers. Now we can see it's logical. Well, starting from the back end of the logistical chain, well, ever more customers would like to know that the guarantees of safety and access to up-to-date technologies, and also the cost of 1 kilowatt-hour of power generated. It's a great change. As recent as 2 or 3 years ago, our customers and partners used to ask, what will be the cost of the installed capacity 1 kilowatt generated? Now we see more that 1 kilowatt of installed capacity, that's good, but what will be the cost of 1 kilowatt hour of power produced, and take on the responsibility for this 1 kilowatt hour in a longer perspective. We believe that it offers a new quality in the development of the nuclear energy sector, because it requires a much longer projection and more responsibility. Responsibility does not stop at the point of NPP commissioning. This responsibility extended to the entire life cycle, minimum 60 years of operation of NPP, and decommissioning. To the point of decommission. These are agreement and mutual liabilities that go up to 80, 90 or 100 years ahead. And it sets quite high requirements of confidence, reliability, predictability, that in our view makes the nuclear energy sector as strategically focused. Indeed, there is a dependence of short-term trends on political and other contexts. On the other hand, the zones or areas of responsibility exceeds overall any timeline between presidential or parliamentary elections or any short-term political trends. It sets a very high level of long-term reliability and predictability. On the other hand, in order to be capable to guarantee not only the cost of an NPP construction, but also the competitiveness of 1 kilowatt-hour generated, we need an ever more integration of the partners. We need to understand the cost and the projected cost of uranium mining over a longer time period, and also the long-term trends of fuel production, equipment manufacture, operation and training, also closing the fuel cycle of fuel reprocessing and NPP decommissioning. It sets even a higher level required for integration. We are absolutely confident that in such context, the forum like this one, ATOMEXPO, is becoming ever more relevant, because we are absolutely sure that this degree of responsibility and predictability and of mutual integration, it's impossible to ensure individually. It may be done only with an ever deeper integration of all the companies in the nuclear energy sector. These changes globally and in the nuclear energy sector itself re-emphasize the conclusion we made several years ago at the ATOMEXPO forum. To ever more extent, all of us employed in the nuclear energy sector, we are allies and partners rather than competitors, because only this in-depth integration can ensure a sustainable development of the nuclear energy sector, its competitiveness versus other types of power generation. We ourselves in Russia, we have made the strategic choice, focused on strategic partnership, alliances, joint ventures with all our partnering countries throughout the life cycle of the energy sector. And we are absolutely sure it's the right choice, and we appreciate very highly our partnership, collaboration. We are very grateful to our partners and like to thank again all those who found an opportunity to attend the ATOMEXPO forum. Welcome, welcome. We are glad to see you here. And we are absolutely confident that our partnership will ensure a sustainable development of the nuclear energy sector in each country individually and globally. Thanks again and welcome.
Many thanks, Sergey, for this keynote speech, and we think what you have said is very, very interesting to put a frame to how nuclear energy is doing internationally. Now, let me explain to you how this session has been organized. We have divided the different topics in three areas. The first one is going to be about what governments think, because as you know, governments are an important actor in nuclear power. The second part is about what are the views of the industry, how they see they consider that it is important. And the third one is about more international organizations, what is their view, because they are continuously analyzing nuclear power for the future. In order to make contributions to these three areas, we have a very high-level panelists that we appreciate very much that they have dedicated time to come here and to share with us important ideas they have. And they are very important actors because they are confronting every day with these issues. So it's not only that they have a theoretical view about energy and nuclear energy. Also, they have to take decisions regarding nuclear power. So this is why their opinion is very important. Apart from Sergei Kirilenko, which, we have been listening to him, and he's the Director General of Rosatom, we have the pleasure of presenting to you Mr. Luc Ursel, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Areva in France, another very, very important player internationally with a lot of experience in the whole fuel cycle. We have also Agneta Risin, who is the Director General of the World Nuclear Associations, where all nuclear industries around the world are members, and they have many groups analyzing how to do better in the nuclear field. We also have Alexander Biskov, who is the Deputy Director General of the IAEA for nuclear energy, and we have a very good international view, especially of how governments think about nuclear power and what are the main issues that they have to face. We have from Japan Takuya Hattori, the president of JAIF, who is the Association of Japanese Industries, which, as you know, has to face many important challenges these days. We have also the pleasure of introducing to you to Mr. Le Duong Quang, who is Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, one country which is launching for the first time an important nuclear program, so his view is also of a great value to us. We have with us from Turkey Mr. Zafer Alper, who is the chairman of the Turkish Atomic Energy, which is going also to present his views from the government side, but also his personal views about nuclear power, as Turkey is launching also for the first time nuclear power. And we have Mina Forsström, who is the project director of the Fennovoima's Hikivi nuclear power plant, a difficult name, of course, for us, and she's going to give us also the view from an industry which is a consumer, a customer of nuclear power. So I think with all of them, you are going to see in these three topics what are the main issues, the main challenges, the main factors which are affecting the development of nuclear power. After their presentations in these three areas, we will have some minutes for having a dialogue between the panelists in order to benefit from the presentation and to discuss a little bit on that and to look forward into the future, which I think this is also going to be interesting. And finally, before I give some conclusions, after the discussions, there will be a voting session about three topics in which I think you could be participating yourself, so that will give us a clear idea of what you think about different aspects of nuclear power. So with all of that, let me thank you again for your interest in this session, which, as I said, is about nuclear energy, a condition for energy stability. As you know, energy in general and electricity in particular is at the bottom, at the root of the economical and social development of our societies. So energy is going to be always a very, very important factor in our societies. So there are many questions about what are the challenges that energy presents for the future, and specifically, with a diversity of energy resources, how nuclear power can contribute to the main challenges that energy policy has in our societies. So I think that with this participation of high-level panelists, we are going to continue increasing our knowledge on how to do better in the future. There are, as you know, some challenges. The society is concerned with some issues, but I think a responsible industry with governments which are looking ahead for the welfare of the societies are able to provide energy also from nuclear power. And this is an additional source which is based on science and technology. So it's a very good asset of developed societies, societies which believe in the information economy, the economy which is based on knowledge. So with that, let me start by the first part, which is more what government think, what are the main factors they take into account when they decided to launch nuclear programs and what they expect from those programs. So the first person to intervene is Mr. Alexander Biskov, the Deputy Director General of the IAEA. Alexander.
Thank you, Luis. I would like start with only a very small quotation, as we agreed. I think many colleagues know and remember that last year, in parallel with ATOMEXPO 2013, the agency, of course with very strong support of Rosatom, organized a ministerial conference on nuclear power in the 21st century. And I would like to make only a very small quotation from President's statement of this conference. Nuclear power remains an important option for many countries to improve energy security, reduce the impact of volatile fossil fuel prices, and mitigate the effect of climate change, despite the Fukushima Daiichi accident. I would like to underline that it was the biggest ministerial conference on nuclear power in this series. We had more than 50 ministers and ministers-level national representatives, and so I can say that these key words really is very good reflection of international understanding of importance of nuclear power.
Okay, many thanks, Alexander, for that introduction to this topic. Now we have Mr. Le Duong Quang, the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evachari. Уважаемые дамы, господа, для меня большая
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to participate in ATOMEXPO 2014 Fora, which was honorably opened here in Moscow, in the capital city of the Russian Federation. On behalf of the Vietnamese delegation, I would like to express my gratitude to IAEA, JAIF, to the Ministry and to the government of the Russian Federation and to Rosatom for the wonderful organization of this event. ATOMEXPO is conducted under the circumstances when the challenges for the protection of global environment of the Earth and the development of global economy are requiring more and more attention. The growth of need in energy and the prices for energy bring to the situation when every country has to choose the optimal power balance for itself in order to develop the economy and safeguard the environment. At the moment, the global economy, including Vietnam, it hasn't fully recovered after the crisis. But in spite of this, I do believe that the economies of the world in general and Vietnam in particular will overcome the consequences of crisis and will continue to grow. The needs in energy will grow quickly, and this will bring to the growth of industrial wastes that will cause the greenhouse effect, and the global climate changes will still be a big threat for the mankind. For that mere reasons, today at the Fora, we are discussing the role of nuclear energy that can face the challenges of energy security and the global climate change. And that's why we discuss the contribution of the nuclear energy in the safe energy supplies for all of us. And we are discussing the competitive power of nuclear power as compared with other sources of energy, as well as other issues related to it. This topic is exceptionally useful for all the countries, especially for those that are in the beginning of their journey to the nuclear energy world. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the master plan for the development of the power industry of Vietnam until 2020, and with a horizon of planning until 2030, our total sum capacities need to grow from the current 28,000 megawatts to 75,000 megawatts by 2020. And the first block of nuclear power plant with a total capacity of 1,000 megawatts should be commissioned in the beginning of 20s. And we expect that by 2025, the capacity of our nuclear power plants should increase up to 4,000 megawatts. At the moment, Vietnam is actively preparing and enhancing the dossier for the argumentation of the choice for the sites, construction sites of the nuclear power plants, with for 2 nuclear power plants of Vietnam with a total output of 4,000 megawatts. Considering the lessons we have learned from Fukushima, at the moment we are thoroughly checking the technical documentation of these 2 projects before we submit them for the official approval. At the same time, we're actively conducting the training program for our human resources for nuclear industry, and also we are developing and enhancing the regulatory framework for the nuclear industry in order to implement the 2 NPP projects. Vietnam is in collaboration with the Russian Federation, and we get efficient assistance from Russia in terms of the construction of the Center for Nuclear Science and Technology. Considering the importance of nuclear energy for the development of 21st century's economy, I do believe that this fora is a great opportunity for us to expand our collaboration, to improve our mutual understanding, so that we could jointly solve such issues as the development of infrastructure, transfer of technologies, development of human resources, and ensuring the nuclear safety and security. Being country that's trying to catch up in nuclear power industry, Vietnam finds it very important to collaborate closely with international organizations, especially the IAEA organization and the countries with the advanced technologies, such as Russia, US, Japan, UK, South Korea. First of all, in training human resources, construction of the complex systems, regulatory bodies, and exchange of experience to ensure we match the requirements of IAEA in terms of developing our nuclear projects. At this fora, Vietnam wants to assure you that we are putting up all the efforts we can, and we are implementing all the measures we can to fulfill our international liabilities in order to build a nuclear power plant in Vietnam in accordance with the schedule at the highest security level and for the peaceful purposes of non-proliferation of nuclear weapon. Thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Mr. Ledwon, for your intervention. And now we have Mr. Zafer Alper, the chairman of the Turkish Atomic Energy Agency, to the Turkish Atomic Agency.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, please allow me to express my sincere gratitude for being together with you in the scope of this forum. I want to express that I found it extremely beneficial to discuss scientifically nuclear technology and nuclear power plants, which in the near future our country aims to have in the scope of this summit. As a developing country, the energy demand of our country and the limited domestic resources are entailing us to build the major projects. Nuclear power plants are amongst these major projects that our country needs. Assessment of the nuclear power plants by all stakeholders is really very important. The development of the energy sector has a direct effect on the development of the other services, such as infrastructure, transport, telecommunications, financial services. In this sense, the risks in order to ensure the security of the energy supplies also pose risks for the other sectors. From this point of view, ensuring secure and uninterruptible energy, which is the locomotive of the development, is the basis of our energy policies. It is proposed that, so as to meet growing electricity demand, approaching 65,000 megawatt installed electricity capacity of Turkey should be doubled by 2030. It is projected that the amount of investment on electricity sector to meet growing electricity demand is $128 billion until the year 2020. In order to ensure a healthy investment environment and a competitive energy market structure, completion of the necessary legal and regulatory framework is among priority targets of our national energy policy. Our government conducts the realization of investments for energy infrastructure and restructuring process of competitive energy markets. Taking into account its successful economy, liberal and innovative investment environment, geopolitical position, low taxes and incentives, customs union agreement with the EU, Turkey has an attractive energy investment environment for private sector at competitive market conditions. Turkey is also one of the countries recovered rapidly following the global economic crisis and one of the least affected countries from the recent global economic uncertainty. Turkey, according to purchasing power parity, in 2012, compared with the EU member states, has risen to the position as the 6th largest economy and the 16th largest economy in the world. Among the most attractive countries for foreign direct investment, Turkey ranks as the 13th. Despite the negativities experienced in the world, in the year 2013, Turkey has achieved 4% economic growth. In order to meet the Turkey's economic growth, the energy growth should reach at a level of 4-5%. In this context, taking into account the supply-demand balance, we are reviewing our legislation, and within the scope of the restructuring, we are trying to make the necessary arrangements. The strategy document on electricity market and supply security, which is considered to be a roadmap for our country's electricity market, introduces the necessary steps to improve energy security and the competitiveness. In addition, privatization, the design of the wholesale market and the issues related to the interconnection are included in the aforementioned document. It is aimed to utilize the potential of renewable energy and to increase its share in the electricity mix at least 30% by 2023. Utilization of nuclear energy in electricity generation is being targeted, and in this context, two important agreements were signed. According to the agreement made with the Russian Federation, the nuclear power plant to be constructed in Mersin Akkuyu is planned to have 4,800 megawatt capacity. On the other hand, within the scope of the agreement with the Japanese government, the construction of 4,480 megawatt nuclear power plant at Sinop is planned to be carried out by Japanese-French partnership. If the same amount of electricity produced by the Akkuyu and the Sinop nuclear power plants, when they come into operation, would have been generated by fossil fuel power plants, a huge amount of carbon dioxide would have been generated. These investments will aid limiting the amount of carbon dioxide emission. These two projects have considerable aspects which are of interest to the investors. First of all, taking part in both projects as an investor is possible. What is more important is that procurement of machinery, equipment, and supplies from country will be provided. In the text of both agreements and the implementation of the both projects, a noteworthy portion of the equipment used in the power plants will be manufactured in our country. Within this framework, the development of the energy industry in our country will gain momentum to a large extent. This will lead to employment of a high number of highly qualified human resources in high-tech jobs. Again, regarding this issue, also for other major projects which we are at the stage of finish. For example, in the lignite project, we are forcing the procurement of domestic resources for our country. Through all these projects, we are bringing forward an important and a big demand to the industrialists and equipment manufacturers. In this context, I would like to invite you distinguished investors to invest also in these areas in our country. Distinguished participants, Turkey itself has a rapidly growing energy market. Our main aim is to provide energy at reasonable prices and to supply energy by environmentally sensitive methods. Therefore, power supply safety is among our top priorities. Until 2023, commissioning of 2 nuclear power plants and giving a start to construct the third one is planned. In 2023, the installed capacity of the Turkey is projected to be between 110,000 to 130,000 megawatt electricity, and electricity consumption is projected to be 500 billion kilowatt hour. Almost all of the natural gas and the liquid fuels and approximately 30% of coal used in meeting the demand for electricity is important, whereas renewable energy plants are alternative energy sources depending on the climatic conditions. Nuclear power plants are base load plants producing continuous energy. Compared to the other base load plants, from the standpoint of low and stable fuel costs, security of supply and environmental impact, nuclear power plants are much more advantageous. Nuclear power plants are important for ensuring the security of energy supply and diversification of energy resources. In the field of energy, the country's dependencies are increasing, and therefore the energy supply and the security have importance more than hitherto. I would like to once again express that Turkey at this point will make utmost effort to contribute to the security of the energy supply. In particular, the recent developments have shown once again that our country, with its versatile energy policies, takes big steps to improve energy security, not only for itself, but also for the region where it is in. In conclusion, as I stated at the beginning of my speech, from the viewpoint of ensuring the security of energy supplies and ranking it in among countries as a technology user in the world, our country's need for nuclear energy and nuclear technology is an undoubted fact. In terms of safety, construction of plants with state-of-the-art is an absolute requirement. Nuclear power plant technologies are highly advanced. In this context, our responsibility is to ensure nuclear plants to have utmost level of safety standards. There is no doubt we will continue to adhere to this principle. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Many thanks, Zafer, for this introduction to the role and importance government gives to nuclear power. We have completed this first area, and now we are going to enter into the second area, is the view of the industry, and this will have two parts. The first part is about the supplier side, and we are very pleased that we have here the representation at the highest level of two organizations, I will call it companies or corporations, which are unique in the sense that, if I'm not wrong, are the only ones which can provide equipment, goods and services in the whole fuel cycle of the nuclear field. So they are very unique on that. So this means that they have a lot of experience in providing the world with nuclear technology, because they cover the complete fuel cycle. So the first one here to speak is again Sergei Kiriyenko, the Director General of Rosatom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that right now there is a rapprochement, a closing in of the requirements to NPP construction. On behalf of the government, what was said by our colleagues in the first part of our session, and also business customers. What is key here, that is ensuring energy independence and energy supply security that should be ensured for a long-term period. Indeed, the highest interest lies, as it was said by my colleagues, is in that the nuclear energy sector is unique in that it can ensure high predictability of the cost of power, of electricity. We have looked up the data for the last 3 years, and the relative volatility of electricity cost was only 7%. And over the past 3 years, average energy generated by thermal power stations is almost several times. It is one of the key points that push the government as a customer and business as customers to signing contracts to build NPP, nuclear power plants. So there is an evolution, and apart from the cost of the NPP itself, ever more importance is being given to the package, comprehensive solutions that necessarily should be attached to the NPP construction contract. You know, I would make an assumption that the era of EPC contracts is nearing to its end, because ever less customers are satisfied with a standard tender for an EPC contract. A very low responsibility is being taken by the technology supplier. He is responsible only for the first 5 years of construction, and his responsibility ends at acceptance for commissioning of the power generating units. But this critical task for which the customer goes for to ensure stability of power supply and the less price volatility, we need even more solutions and decisions. Right now, solutions that come to the forward front, they are the ones like financing models with a right approach to every individual customer, to look for optimum financing patterns, or like the examples of Turkey, which has just been highlighted by our esteemed colleague. That is when the investor is allowed to co-finance the NPP construction, and after that he would sign a long-term contract for power supply. In the same model, the Hanhikivi project of Finland, where not the government is the customer, but a consortium of more than 40 private companies, industrial companies, power generating companies, for which it's critical to have a comprehensive solution. It's also a guaranteed fuel supply for a long-term period with a predictable price, and natural uranium price, and enrichment and fuel fabrication prices. Of course, the nuclear energy sector has a strong advantage there. It's important to ensure energy independence. and the stability of fuel supply, it's a high advantage of the nuclear energy sector. The starting load of a nuclear reactor ensures the operation for 5 years ahead. So it's a very high degree of autonomy, of independence. Also with the nuclear fuel, you may have storages, you may store it for several years, while it's not the case with coal. But to make decades stockpiling of nuclear fuel in NPP is quite possible. With our partners, we are discussing right now the possibility of signing such contracts. Indeed, also highly important is the capability of the customer to ensure contracting and guarantee supplies for years ahead. The life cycle of NPPs goes up. The new generation of technologies, we very conservatively would say that our new NPPs will operate for minimum 60 years, but it's a very conservative evaluation. On the other hand, we are absolutely sure that it will be 80 or 90 years. So it's rather economic appropriateness to extend the technical availability of the equipment. So guaranteed fuel supplies should ensure a long-term period of those. For the same time period, we need to secure also the financing and the technology pattern, ensuring waste disposal, environmentally acceptable, and also future decommissioning. Another interesting indicator, which is of an interest for many customers, business and the government, that is localization. Access to technologies, gaining appropriate experience. Almost always you face a question, what scope of work may be done by a company or an ordering country. So the degree of localization is going up. We used to start progress 20% of localization. Currently, the latest contracts in Hungary, we hope, will have a 40% localization of equipment manufacture locally. Same negotiations are underway with our Turkish colleagues. We have already deployed this work in Vietnam. It's also one of the critical requirements to us from the customer. Therefore, in our view, if we look at all the recent decisions made on NPP construction, I make a conclusion that pure NPC contracts, APM contracts, is dying out because the standard requirements are a sort of a limiting thing. You may not include localizations, for instance. In Europe, it will go counter to the current regulations and standards. You may not include the same requirements for financing. Maybe this is the reason why tenders are well organized, like in the Czech Republic, and that tender actually ended without giving a result, because the CES, a high authority, powerful company, turned out, found itself before the need to guarantee the 1 kilowatt-hour purchasing cost. And if the government is unable to give this guarantee, the tender ended with nothing. Therefore, where many tenders currently start and then end without announcing the winner, and one or two partners are identified for direct negotiations, and signing intergovernmental agreements also may take place, like with Vietnam and Turkey, Bangladesh. A similar solution is being exercised now by the UK government, signing direct contracts to guarantee payments up to a level of the cost of electricity, because going over to such direct negotiations and intergovernmental agreements allows to package all the sum of liabilities that is highly important for developing the respective country, in particular only starting the road to nuclear energy development. If we include all the infrastructure, including facilitating lawmaking, training, and working with the public, it's also a new phenomenon. While previously, when contracting for NPP construction, public hearings were not on the agenda. We're not including the responsibility of the customer. Right now, it's integral to the basic agreements. We signed at this forum today an agreement on opening up such a center in Belarus. 2 centers have been set up, the latest one in Turkey, Another such center will be launched in Vietnam. So every partnering country raises the point of establishing such a center together with a research and educational center. So public support and absolute transparency are vital as a term for developing nuclear energy. I believe such changes are in progress, and not only in an individual country, but we sense it in the entire marketplace. To finish my presentation, I would say there is one particular feature. There is always an individual set of requirements. Even if an APC contract could be standard, more or less a standard product could be made, put on the table, and we could say, every one of you choose who would like and this assortment of standard contracts. Right now we say, we, Rosatom, should promote account management. That is management focused on each individual customer. This is the idea of JVs and establishing representative offices in the countries we would like to start operate. There are, of course, individual particular features relating to the comprehensive system development in each country. And then it will allow us to be more customer-focused and to respond more exactly to requirements of each customer.
Many thanks, Sergei. And now I have the pleasure of presenting to you Mr. Luc Ursel. He is, as you know, the Chief Executive Officer of Areva, which is, as I say, a very, very important player internationally in the whole of the fuel cycle, and also coming from a country which is the leader in the production of electricity in proportion to the total production, with more than 75% of the electricity of France. So I think his views are going to be also very, very interesting for us. So, Luc, you have the floor.
Thank you. And I would like first to congratulate Rosatom for the growing success of ATOMEXPO, which is really impressive. And I would like also to thank Sergei Kirienko for his invitation, because it's well known that we are competing on the markets, but it's also well known that in front of all the challenges we have for the nuclear industry, there is a strengthened need, for cooperation. And I think this kind of debate is very useful, to define a common approach on a certain number of subjects. So I was asked to explain if I have seen some evolutions of the government expectations in the last years or decades. Yes, obviously. It's clear that the government support is absolutely key if you want to develop nuclear programs. But the governments are not expecting now only a cheap and predictable electricity. They are not only expecting the security of supply, they want to be in a position to answer to all the legitimate questions which come from the public opinions and which are mainly summed up in two aspects. Can I trust this technology? And will I benefit from this technology? Okay. And from this point of view, there is clearly a new way of doing business, of dealing with the countries, to be in a position, to answer to these questions. Okay. And probably I would like to develop this on 5 aspects. The first one, obviously, is safety. It's clear that after Fukushima, we had the collective challenge to regain and to foster public support and confidence. And frankly speaking, I think that the mobilization of the nuclear industry and the safety authorities after Fukushima to react on all the lessons learned from this accident has been exemplary and has helped to regain confidence. It's clear also that the nuclear safety authorities everywhere in the world have updated, have upgraded their requirements. And what is new and what is good is that they work more and more together. Some decades ago, this was a purely national approach. Now the public opinions don't understand if there is no cooperation between the safety authorities. And we have seen an accelerated trend towards the Gen 3 type of reactors for new builds. And this was one of our major choices as a company to design a range of reactors which are meeting the highest safety standards. I think this must become the common rule for all the players of this industry. But we must move now collectively toward common approaches in terms of safety and more dialogue between the different national safety authorities towards an harmonization of the standards. When we speak about safety, obviously we think of the reactors. But as it has been said very correctly, safety is also for all the activities, all the nuclear activities, fuel cycle, decommissioning. We, as an industry, we have to be able to demonstrate that we meet these highest safety standards, not only to build and operate the reactors, but also to build and operate the fuel facilities and to decommission properly the plants. The second very strong expectation which comes now concerns localization and jobs. It's clear that now, in front of the high investments, which is represented by a nuclear plant, the government wants some jobs. They want business for their home countries, and it's probably something new. And they expect a strong contribution of their local industries to provide commodities, components, services necessary not only for the construction, but also for the operation and the maintenance of the NPP. And I would say that this localization also is part of the public acceptance. It's very key that in France, if there has been such a strong support, to the nuclear industry, it is because it has created highly qualified jobs, and robust jobs. And we have always encouraged this approach by organizing, workshops to introduce all the qualification process, the quality requirements which are needed when you want to participate in a nuclear program. What is important is to help the local industries, the local companies, to develop their safety culture and to prepare for the implementation of the safety equipments. This might imply more cooperation between our traditional suppliers, which are normally national suppliers, French suppliers, for example, for us, or German suppliers, and local suppliers. And we encourage for this purpose the creation of joint ventures, joint ventures which are accelerating the transfer of technologies, accelerating the transfer of know-how, and helping, to build an efficient supply chain. And I think that one of the major benefits of this is the fact that if you can invite local suppliers to participate in nuclear programs, you contribute to the upgrade of their industrial capabilities, and they become more and more competitive on all the markets and for whatever the sectors. And this is clear that if we have been very present in China, it's because right from the beginning we have made the choice of localization and we have built a real supply chain with Chinese partners. The third very strong expectation from the government is about training. Okay. We know that the nuclear industry, to operate, will require thousands of qualified jobs. And there is, right from the beginning, very early on in the process, the need to develop integrated offers in terms of training. This is not only the responsibility of the constructors, this is of course the responsibility of the operator, but beyond those two players, this is the responsibility of all the universities and actors, which play a leading role in the training and the development of the capabilities. This is why in France we have created an International Institute of Nuclear Energy to really gather all the competencies which are available and to help to build lectures, internships, vocational training program, etc., etc. And we have accumulated a large experience because in 20 years we have trained with our Chinese colleagues more than 1,200 Chinese engineers through 166 sessions. The fourth aspect is related to financing. It's clear that today, in the context of economic and financial crisis, financing such long-term and capital-intensive assets as NPP has become a real challenge, especially in deregulated markets. And you have probably heard the warning which has been sent 2 weeks ago by the International Energy Agency, saying that probably there could be a lack of investment in the energy sector because there was a need to recreate conditions to attract investments. It is, of course, our responsibility as companies, as technology providers, to demonstrate that construction risks are reduced for return of experience, that licensing risks can be mitigated through more cooperation between safety authorities, and that obviously we will operate this plant at the highest level of safety. However, it is the responsibility of the policymakers, of the governments, to adopt, to define a viable investment framework for nuclear investment. The power sector in Europe has attracted risk-averse investors for decades, but unfortunately, it's now considered as an unpredictable market where it's very difficult to invest, and I think that the Czech example, which has been described by Sergei Kirienko, is a good example of this. There is a need, but there is no solution. And in that respect, the British model is an interesting model, effectively because under the proposed electricity market reform, producers will be able to enter into long-term contracts to produce energy from nuclear or renewables for a guaranteed and long-term price. So there is a new balance to define between market liberalization, which is extending all over the world, and long-term arrangements which are absolutely necessary to trigger nuclear investment. So as a conclusion, I would like to say that effectively we are entering in a new era where if we want to help a certain number of countries to move to nuclear, we must be able not only to propose good technologies, good contracts, to build reactors, but really global packages where the countries can find a way to answer all the legitimate questions coming from their public opinion. Thank you.
Many thanks, Lick, for this presentation. And now let's see in this part of the industry, the other side of the industry, which are the industries which really are the customers of the suppliers. So we have the pleasure of presenting to you Mina Forsström, that, as I say, is the project director for the Fennovoima's Hanhikivi nuclear power plant in Finland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen. Good to be here. It's interesting to meet these fresh ideas from the nuclear industry, and thank you, Mr. Kirienko, for the invitation. But back to the original questions. Since I'm present in the private sector, completely privately owned a company which investing now in the Hanhikivi project in Finland, and we do have the cooperational model with Rosatom. I would say that in the long run and in the big picture, that all the investments, they need to be plainly commercially feasible. That you have to meet, like Mr. Kirienko said, the price of the megawatt hours. Even though that it's a nuclear power plant, it has to meet the market price or even beat it. That's what comes into the big picture, that you do have to have the integrated solution. You have to understand what is the capital expenditure, what is the financial model, and what is in the long run, even over to this 100-year period, what are all the cost structures, and truly and honestly develop that together with your stakeholders and shareholders and all the partnership who are participating in this. Otherwise, it gets so risky business. Who will invest in the long run in this kind of, if it doesn't actually meet or beat, like I said, the market price. And it's about the development of the project together, how to make this even faster or even cheaper, maybe wrong word here, but anyhow, it's about the development and cooperation. And I believe that since there's a lot of experience and a lot of possibilities, this kind of a partnership model could be developed even further. And it needs to be involved all the organizations around, what they can afford into the private sectors also. And it's not it's a very useful phrase, but it needs to be a kind of win-win model to all the parties, and also to the society in that respect, that we are able to offer on this competitive long-run market price electricity. That's how the good projects are built, and the partnerships are motivated throughout this kind of commercial view. That's what the private sector believes. So. Thank you.
Many thanks for these comments about what the private sector needs and how they take their decision. So I think this completes the second part, which is about the views of the industry. So now we are going to go to the third area, which is the view of international organizations. First of all, let me introduce to you again Agneta Risin. She is the Director General of the World Nuclear Association in London, where all nuclear industries are working together. So, Agneta.
Thank you very much, Senor Luis Chavarri, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me here. ATOMEXPO 2014 is looking like a real good success. And thanks especially to Sergei Kirienko for giving me the opportunity to speak here to you today. I'm representing the global nuclear industry from the World Nuclear Association, and we have members who want us to give trust and confidence in the nuclear industry so the nuclear industry can grow, as well as our members want us to influence coming regulations and standards, and also to make the business possibilities grow stronger. And we do this with, of course, with a lot of cooperation through our members, but also we have a website which I wanted to mention because the WNA website, I would say, is the best nuclear website in the world. And wherever I go, I see people nodding in the audience. I like that. Wherever I go, when I meet with ministers or ambassadors or the people who prepare the speeches for the ministers, they say, we always use your website for finding the information. And that's exactly what our members want, that it is the industry facts that are coming to the ministers and that are used. So it's really factual. And it's also used by regulatory bodies and institutes, as well as universities. If there would be some students here, I would also think they have used the website. We have also the World Nuclear News, and that is free for everybody, and it gives news once every day. And this way, we are paving the way for new and growing nuclear business. And we also do the market report, and in the market report, which came last year, which we do it every second year, we see that nuclear industry will grow with 55%. That is our reference scenario, with 55% to 2030. But there is also scenarios with a stronger growth. And what we see also when it comes to drivers, of course, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they say that the CO2-free energy sources have to grow threefold in order to protect the climate. And we all know that nuclear is one of those energy sources that can do this. In fact, the only one that can tick three boxes at the same time, being reliable, being affordable, and being good for the climate. So this is very important. And then some people will say, but can we really do this? Can we really manage to increase nuclear that much? And I see we have the strong nuclear leaders here, and they are prepared to deliver on this. And I see that we also have governments around who are prepared to go this route. And I'd like to just take one example, because if we can look back and see what has happened, we can also look forward and see what can happen. And I will just give one example, and that is France. In 15 years, it only took 15 years to totally decarbonize the whole electricity supply in France. And France is a big country, and they could do it in less than 15 years. So I'm quite sure we can do this. And also, even when we go to times when there is less money and people are hardly surviving, the choice is always nuclear energy as well, because it is a low price and stable energy source. But we see some threats as well. Regulation, over-regulation, regulation that do not direct the industry in the right way. So we are working a lot to make the regulations smarter and more efficient, and to have standards in place for also like the supply chain that was mentioned here, and also for future reactor designs, and to be able to do licensing in a shorter time. And of course also areas like transport and different requirements for transport of nuclear material. This year is very important on the highest level, because the International Energy Agency is making their World Energy Outlook, which they usually do, but this time it will have also a nuclear chapter. And we are looking very much forward to have a lot of very important facts about nuclear in there. And then I would just echo what's already been said. Knowledge development, capacity building, and the young generation is something we also support with our activities with the World Nuclear University. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Agneta, for your introduction to the subject. And now we have a different international organization. Agneta is representing an association of industries, but there are also governments associated through the IAEA. And again, Alexander Biskov, the Deputy Director General for Nuclear Energy, is going to present to us his views about nuclear power coming from the IAEA.
Thank you, Luis. In our Russian-speaking table, we agreed that I will continue in Russian. So I think it's possible due to a lot of my friends.
Good afternoon, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. I will continue my speech in Russian. Please put slide number 8. So, IAEA is conducting annual assessment on the development of nuclear industry, nuclear energy industry for the coming 10-20 years and until 2050. Every August we are publishing the survey of the power and the assessment of the nuclear energy until 2030. You can see our recent projections on this slide. The green and gray bars here mean our minimal and maximal expectations and assessments for 2020 and 2030 respectively. You can see here that our recent opinion says that the minimum growth of the nuclear energy in the world is 17%, the maximum growth until 2030 is to 94%. As you see, over the recent years the trends slightly declined. And of course, everybody wants to associate this decline with the disaster accident at Fukushima 1, but this is not so. A lot of factors are in place, and one of them is the decline of the need in the energy, which is strongly affected by the recent financial economic crisis. Apart from this trend takes into consideration the so far low gas prices. So we conduct this assessment every year, and we consider the situation region by region. So as for the figures, today that we have 4,036 reactors, because last week one more reactor, Atuchi 2, was launched. Well, statistically, this means 373 gigawatts of electricity, and according to the forecast, the maximum growth until 2030 will be up to 722 gigawatts and 435 gigawatts if we have minimum growth. Geographically, this growth is very unevenly spread. The maximum growth is expected in Far East, in China, first of all, partly in the Republic of Korea, where we anticipate at the maximum growth out about 268 gigawatts of growth, 3.5 times growth. If we take the Eastern European region, where today the capacities are 48 gigawatt, the maximum growth here is quite impressive, 124 gigawatts, 2.5 times growth. In Western Europe, that is quite saturated with nuclear energy. We do have the assessment. The North America in our assessment gives different trends. In the optimistic scenario, a moderate growth. In the pessimistic scenario, a slight decline. The growth of nuclear energy in Asian and Pacific regions and in Latin America, just like in Africa, is anticipated after 2030. This is what IAEA shows after the analysis of the information we got from the countries, from the international energy organizations. And we take into account, of course, the needs and the supply and the demand. But where are the problems? Of course, everybody agrees that we will hardly have that high growth until 2030. And most probably, the reason for that would be the factor mentioned by Monsieur Arcel a few minutes ago. The reason will be human resources that will ensure the sustainable and safe operation of the nuclear plants. This is something a number of vendors offer to including Rosatom offers to the countries that are building their nuclear energy. This allows us to stick to this or that scenario, of course. And today, of course, the role of state is very important, because the state and the government can approve and agree the sustainable sales price of 1 kilowatt of power, nuclear power, for a particular period of time. And today we do have opportunities to decrease the risks.
To mitigate the financial risks and to implement most safe technologies, we all need to provide personnel to that. Several months ago, we held a major conference on developing HR, and indeed many countries said that there are obstacles, there is a need to deal with this issue in detail and seriously. I'd like to add to it regarding our assessment. Currently, Areva, Rosatom, Westinghouse allow our participating countries, the countries who are just at the beginning of the road in nuclear energy, can make a wider choice. They enjoy a wide choice. For the coming years, we have a pattern in our agency, 5+5. We estimate that in the coming 5 years, 5 new countries will build their pioneering NPPs. 2 of them already launched construction, like United Arab Emirates, Belarus, and other 3 countries will strike new contracts in the coming 5 years to build the first NPPs. Indeed, as an agency, we can currently work as an information center that processes the existing record or experience of other countries, both positive and negative experience, including Russia, Japan, France, the UK, to convert this experience into simple recommendations to other countries who are beginning to build NPPs. We have very good examples in the United Arab Emirates, an excellent example in Belarus, where our recommendations are followed, maybe not 100%, but at maximum. And this is the prerequisite for the future of a stable and safe development of nuclear energy. Dear colleagues, today, after the Fukushima syndrome is past, we can state that if we have certain conditions and drivers, I mean the variety of financial approaches and tackling the back-end fuel cycle issues and also training. If we resolve all this issue, we'll be able to retain the share of nuclear energy in the energy balance available. During the coming 2 decades, regarding the energy balance as a whole, you know that 2 years ago, a project was launched by the United Nations, Sustainable Energy for Everybody, or for all. At our IAEA agency, we collaborate with other agencies, and we come to a conclusion that in the coming 2 decades, the primary source of energy will be organic hydrocarbons like coal, oil, and gas. When nuclear energy, given its sophisticated nature, its complexity, will retain its positions. But no one knows what will happen after 2030. Possibly there will be a tangible growth of nuclear energy in the energy balance. But it's such a remote perspective that probably we should not take those as a future picture of the world. We can get a new technology revolution, like we got it with the shale gas that followed. There was a technology breakthrough in that, in drilling. Maybe in the near future we'll have more technology revolutions, but also in our sector. Our colleagues from many countries are in proactive waiting for new products in the market, like small-size reactors that could be manufactured by independent energy systems. Would allow to use the energy, nuclear energy, not only for power generation, but even more widely, also using nuclear energy in other industries. And finally, there will be 4th-generation reactors that could demonstrate a higher effectiveness of using nuclear fuel with the same economics as currently with water-pressured reactors. Well, our IAEA agency is always optimistic. Hopefully, this forum will one of the steps forward. Well, to show to all those who are contemplating the construction of NPPs that there is a set of technologies and approaches in the world, also approaches to training, that ensure this growth. Thank you.
Now, before coming specifically to Japan, which I think is very interesting for all of us, what is happening there, I think Mr. Zafer-Alper would like to make some personal comments coming from a country using nuclear power for the first time.
Thank you. Especially, there are some factors based on the experience that Turkey is currently in. Especially, there are some factors, according to me, that can foster the growth of nuclear shale. The first one is commercialization of the Generation 4 reactors. Actually, the commercialization of the Generation 4 reactors are expected in 2030s or beyond. But if you look at the 6th design in this category with 4 challenging technical properties, they look very attractive, and once they become commercial after 2030s, they are expected to be used widely. Especially 2 properties of these Generation 4 designs made them preferable after Fukushima. The first one is no off-site emergency response. The second one is life cycle cost advantage over the other energy alternative resources. Therefore, this factor can foster the global nuclear shale. The other one is maybe the creation of the awareness among the people on nuclear technology and the benefits of the nuclear applications by means of nuclear industry associations or international organizations promoting nuclear. The other factor, maybe this is my personal idea, it is in addition to the generic design assessments of the new designs offered by the nuclear industry, completion of the generic design assessments by IAEA, and if possible by a third country. And these all assessments will facilitate and shorten the approval of a recipient country for MPP designs. And the other factor may be provision of enough financial, technical, and educational resources to the developing recipient countries in the fields of licensing, in the fields of training, and in the fields of human resources for their training, enough competent experts. Therefore, I think all those factors will contribute to the increase of the global nuclear share, but with different weighting factors.
Okay, so many thanks for this intervention, which opens the floor for the debate that we are going to have after the presentation from Takuya Hattori. There are many comments on what you say, Zafer. But now we all have been impacted by, as the situation in Fukushima has had a tremendous impact in the world and in the future of nuclear power. But where it has had a tremendous impact has been in Japan, both from the point of view of the impact on the people, as you know, in the area of Fukushima, in addition to the terrible seismic and tsunami events, which really had a lot of casualties in Japan, things which most of the people forgets, that the casualties came from the tsunami, not from the nuclear accident. But now the situation of the industry there, more than 3 years after the tsunami, is still very complex. So we have the privilege of having first-hand information from Takuya Hattori, who, as you know, is the president of JAIF, the Association of Japanese Industries. Takuya, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chechavari, and also thank you, Mr. Kirienko, to be invited here. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Takuya Hattori from Japan Atomic Industrial Forum. My career is mostly almost 44 years in the nuclear fields. And 36 years in TEPCO, and I have been the president and the station manager of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. And so, more than 3 years passed, and I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to all the support from the nuclear and world community for the supporting for Japan. And Japan is now moving ahead, but it takes, I think it takes more than 40 years. And continuous support we are expecting, and we will do our best, and we will overcome the current situation. And today, I would like to talk about the current situation and the nuclear future in Japan. And the Japanese situation is very, very complicated, and so please allow me to use the slide. And I think it's very, very difficult. Japan, especially the Fukushima situation, is very complicated, and it's very difficult for you to understand what's going on, what's the future. And I would like to talk today, first is the Fukushima situation, and the second is the nuclear power plant in Japan, and the third is the nuclear policy for the future. Okay, first slide, please. The current situation is the status of Fukushima. We have 4 big issues. One is still 130,000 local people have been suffering a very difficult time as evacuees. And contaminated water is accumulated. The current level is about 40,000 cubic meters, increasing every day, 300 or 400 ton per day increasing. And now is being purified and stored in the tank. And also decommissioning is, we have 4 damaged reactors, especially 3 reactors is completely core melted. And the current situation is not well understood. How is debris is, where the configuration is, not yet known. and the decontamination of the surrounding environment. This is related to the local people evacuation. Is in progress, but not so much, very slowly. We are so much supported by the Russia and also the Ukraine and Belarus in this area. Next page. Now is all the nuclear power plant, 48 nuclear power plant, 44 gigawatt have been shut down since last September. Not yet started. Now is 18 plants out of 48 are in the progress of the safety assessment by the regulatory body based on the new regulation. The start of nuclear power plant is expected late of this year, but it is not clear when and how many units will restart. Next, please. Because of all the nuclear power plant shutting down, effects by suspension of all nuclear power plants is how much it's very huge. Power supply has been assured by restarting aged fossil plant. Energy conservation has been requested, but very fortunately, no electricity shortage happened. However, still high risk for energy supply because very aged thermal power plant that is not efficient and not so reliable. And import of crude oil and natural gas sharply increased because no energy resources in Japan. Additional cost to purchase oil and gas is 4.1 trillion Japanese yen. This is equivalent to 41 billion US dollar per year. Huge amount of money was falling out from Japan. And the CO2 emission increased more than 10%. And electricity rate change for household is about 10% increase, and for industries about 15% increase. But continuous shutdown we have to once again increase the rate. That's a very big impact to the industry. Next, please. In these circumstances, the fourth strategic energy plan of Japan, that was based on the basic energy policy law, and this is the fourth energy plan that was decided by the current administration, led by the Prime Minister Abe, LDP, and that is very fortunate for us one. The basic energy point energy policy is 3E plus S. The 3E is energy security, economic efficiency, and environment conservation. And safety is all the basic. And another was very, very difficult for you to understand, but please read us afterwards. But anyway, the nuclear power is an important baseload power source. That was a very, very, very important message to not only in Japan, but also in the world, I think. And next page, please. And next is the message is very, very, very complicated and very, very difficult for you to understand. Dependency on nuclear power generation will be lowered to the extent possible. That this is a very, very political message. And anyways, we will do our best to develop the renewable. But I think it's not easy, not practical. And the volume of electricity to be secured by nuclear power generation is, from now on, we will discuss internally. We will discuss in Japan. It takes another several months or maximum 1 year or so. And so finally, we can reach the energy mix, the figure, but it depends on the start of a nuclear power plant. How many units, by what, by when? That it's heavily affected for the decision of the energy mix. And finally, Japan's role in the global nuclear development, I would like to lead, share the lesson learned from the Fukushima accident and enhance safety of the nuclear installation in the world. That might be the most important at present time. And next is promote decommissioning of damaged reactors of Fukushima in cooperation with international community. This is also very important. We will do the decommissioning with the international cooperation. And the third is support of the nuclear development program of newcomer countries. We will continue the support of the newcomer country like Vietnam and Turkey and Finland. So many countries are expecting Japanese technology. And the fourth is contribute to assure the international regime of the nuclear non-proliferation and also nuclear security. And finally, we would like to take the lead in the national research and development program of innovative nuclear technology, not only the nuclear power, but the fuel cycle area. Thank you.
Many thanks for giving us this very concrete and accurate information of what is going on in Japan. I think that we all understand that in addition to the suffering that the tsunami caused in Japan, also there is a tremendous economical impact for not using nuclear power. Of course, when we talk about nuclear power, we are talking about safe nuclear power. And I hope that you will overcome those difficulties soon and that the nuclear industry will be able to demonstrate that they have made a very thorough review of many reactors and that the reactors which meet all the safety conditions are needed for the society in order to provide electricity, because if not, you will continue with a tremendous impact. So, with that, I think we have finished the part of the presentations. I appreciate very much that all the speakers were controlling the timing very well. So I think from that point of view, we are doing well all together. But now there is another part which could be interesting. We have seen many factors, many factors, which affect the development of nuclear power. In fact, I would say that too many factors. I think nuclear power is one of the more complex activities of human beings because, there is nothing which is so much affected by everything that you can imagine. But looking ahead, one of the questions that I would like to bring up to all the speakers is, after listening to the other speakers and seeing all these conditions, what would be the things which have to happen in order to go from the 50% of electricity that nuclear power produces today to, let's say, in a couple of decades, to 20%? What would be the factors which really would be helping in leading in that direction? Taking into account that the world is very diverse, the situation in every country is different, and it's difficult to have one-size-fits-all in the nuclear field. But taking that into account and looking at big areas of the world, let me ask that question to all the speakers one by one to see what will be the reaction of what will be the factors which will be really helping in the coming 2 decades to come from 50% of the electricity from nuclear power to 20%. So let's start now by looking from your side, from the right side of the panel. So let me ask that question to Mr. Le Duong Quang from Vietnam. What do you think of that? Well, the question is, what do you think, looking at the world as a whole, that will be the most important factors, one or two, that could help in increasing the proportion of nuclear power, coming from 15% today of electricity to, let's say, 20% in a couple of decades? For you, coming from a country which is using nuclear power for the first time, what do you think that could animate other countries also to follow that trend? Well, I think, take your some time, so you will see the reaction for the others, so then the question will be more clear for you. So let's continue with Takuya Hattori. What will be your comment on that?
Yes, I think it's the most important for the public support public support. That means the public support is very much related to the policy support. And based on that is how can we prepare the financial condition to promote the nuclear development. And so these two, the public acceptance and policy support. And in addition to that is, I think this now is all the nuclear power, all the countries are now facing the radioactive waste, the final disposal, such a issue. How can we work together to solve that problem? That might be the three factors, I think.
Many thanks for that. Agneta.
Thank you very much. It will be hard for the ones in the end. I'm happy you started from this side. So I will mention again the same thing, of course, public support, because we see that governments go through what is popular, and then they go to what's practical, and then they go to what's popular. And when they go to what's practical, they will go for nuclear. When they go what's popular, they will go against nuclear. So we may have to make nuclear energy more popular, and not only public acceptance, but the confidence and the trust in the nuclear industry we have to build with. I also say if there will be a strong global support for limiting greenhouse gas emissions, for instance, regional agreements or other type of agreements, then nuclear has a real good future. And then I would like to just mention this simple fact that economic growth in countries around the world, they will go for nuclear because it's give you low-cost energy, reliable, and with clean technology. So if the economic growth is ongoing, these governments, where they have money to invest and they like to look into infrastructures that will be sustainable, they will go for nuclear energy. So I think these are important factors.
Okay, many thanks, Agneta. Lick?
Okay, effectively it's a difficult task, but I will try to find three conditions. The first one is, as it has been said by Agneta, the success of political actions, to control the climate change. I think we have a unique opportunity with the Paris conference next year. We will have also, as it has been said, a study on nuclear this year, on energy outlook. So for me, this is one of the very important conditions. Second condition is more cooperation between safety authorities towards harmonization, towards standard harmonization, because today, believe us, it's really, an obstacle, to the cost control of all these projects. And last but not the least, as I said in my speech, I think we have collectively to reconvince again the investors that nuclear is a good long-term investment, and for this we need policy frameworks, and we need to recreate these attractive conditions.
Okay, many thanks, Sergei.
Well, I will try not to repeat the previous speakers because I fully share their opinions. Maybe something to add to the previous opinions. I would add the question I mentioned in my main presentation. I do believe that there are resources for the decrease of the cost of kilowatt per hour due to the complex approach. The further decrease of price, that's my opinion. If we find any resources to decrease the cost of kilowatt per hour per 10-15%, this will dramatically change the situation, and it will open up new opportunities for the markets. And this is not a linear correlation. The decrease per 10-15% will give us the opportunities not to increase by 20% that you mentioned, Luis, but to double our potential. The second thing, which is part of the cost, but this is on the other side, it's on the side of the banks and finances, that's the cost of financing. Of course, the period of construction and the cost of financing, given that we have more resources for the borrowed finances, and you know that the majority of investors and clients have to work with the borrowed finances. So the combination of time of the project and cost of finances seriously impacts the decision-making process. That's why the further acceleration of construction period and the access to cheaper and longer money is vitally important, because in nuclear energy it's very costly to build, but it's relatively cheap to operate. And the third thing I would add is the emergence of the small and medium capacity reactors. This will immediately open up the markets of developing countries. Many of them really want to have nuclear energy today. And we already work with a number of partners for whom the reactor with 1,000, 1,500 megawatt capacity is simply not on their energy agenda. It's too much for them, while the less capacities would allow to increase the output of nuclear power in the total power energy balance of the world.
Many thanks, Sergei, for that. Alexander, what is your opinion?
In Russian.
I would like to start by saying that today we can split the world into two groups of countries. The first group of countries cares about efficiency. The second group cares about availability. Today, the newcomers our agency is working with are the countries that care more about availability. That is to say, these countries want new sources of energy. Every country is, of course, specific. Western Europe, US, care more about efficiency. There are four restricting factors, in my opinion, and they restrict the attractiveness of nuclear energy. Surprisingly, the first factor is the public aspect and the understanding and acceptance by the society of the fact that nuclear energy can be safe and efficient. Number two is the financial aspect. Our colleagues referred to it. And yes, indeed, today we are going through a revolution in terms of funding of nuclear industry. And number three are the human resources I mentioned. Most of all, this is one of the most significant problems, because today in many countries the popularity of nuclear physics is on a very low level, unfortunately. And the fourth component is the political component that we didn't mention today, but still I believe from the perspective of our agency that in any case we need to enforce the non-proliferation mode, and if we manage to create a sustainable system globally which ensures the non-proliferation of nuclear weapon, then we will have additional chances for political decision-making on the construction of new nuclear power plants worldwide. So by solving these four problems in these four areas, we will be able to say that the nuclear industry will increase its share in the global energy balance.
Now, Mina, it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of the previous commenters already mentioned about the public support and the acceptance. I think the only way to gain really the public acceptance, to have the winning stories, we need to have a good project which is profitable, and all the stakeholders truly understand what it's for them actually, how it can be developed, the economic. Mr. Chairman started by saying that the energy supply is the economical backbone in the long run, and it can also develop a lot of social aspects and knowledge development and things like that. So there's a lot of good things also in relationship on this market view. But in the big picture, this project need to be feasible, and they have to bring the good, and we have to spread the good word and have to have the excellent project, kind of winning story in the long run. Then we will gain the public support and the public acceptance for the nuclear industry.
Okay, many thanks, Mina. And now, Zafer, what do you think after listening to the others?
Okay. I have some, comments on this issue. Maybe something different from the other colleagues. One of them is creation of the awareness, maybe the similar one, but in terms of differing wording, creation of awareness among the people on nuclear technology and, the benefits of the nuclear technology by means of nuclear industry associations or international organizations promoting the nuclear. Maybe the other factor, maybe the approval of or the commercialization of the Generation 4 reactors may lead to the increase of the global nuclear shares. Because as far as I know today, there are a couple of obstacles in front of the nuclear technology deployment. One of them is, after Fukushima, is the off-site, emergency response. The other one is the competitiveness of the nuclear over to the other sources. And the Generation 4 designs has these two advantages. Therefore, these two properties made them preferable, but it will take time, maybe till to the 2030s or beyond them. The third one, maybe, there are new designs, Generation 3 designs, now currently available on the market. And if the suppliers of these designs made additional, generic design assessments by IAEA, then they made them ready in the market to get by the recipient countries. Therefore, in addition to the home countries, in addition to the suppliers' own generic design assessments, if all new designs in the category of the Generation 3+ are done by the IAEA with certain requirements, then they will also lead to facilitate the approval process in the recipient countries and lead to the increase in the global nuclear share in the world.
Okay. Zafer, many thanks. Now maybe we can come back to Mr. Le Duong Quang. Do you want to add something to the debate? No? Okay. Well, we have seen the different perceptions. There is a common ground for all the speakers, but also there are nuances about some other factors. But I think we have some minutes to have a dialogue between the speakers. Any of you want to react to what others have said and to make some comment on that? That could be interesting, especially if you want to introduce some nuances on the discussion. Well, maybe I can help you on. Zafer Alper has been mentioning about something which I think there is a need, clearly, is that newcomers consider that licensing of a reactor is a complex activity when you don't have experience. So from that point of view, it will be very, very nice to have somebody licensing things for you. But I'm afraid that this is a little bit unrealistic, in the sense that it's very difficult to separate licensing from responsibility. So only can license somebody who has the responsibility of things. And my experience with international organizations, as you know, I was the head of one of them, the Nuclear Energy Agency of the OECD. One of the characteristics is that we are not responsible for anything. We are outside of the legal systems of any place. So really what we do is fine, but nobody can come to us to say what you did is wrong. So now what are the consequences for you? Because, we are not responsible. So what the NEA, my previous organization, as you know, I retired at the end of April after many years, is the MDEP project, which is in between that. What it tries is to put regulators together to have a common approach to certain concrete models of reactors in order to, in a relatively reasonable time, to come with a common approach by regulators, but respecting the responsibility of each regulator on that. This is also in discussion with the Cordell Group within WNA, in order to see the view of the industry, and I think that would be a clear indication of how people can join forces in order to rationalize the design of nuclear power plants. I personally, after, as you know, more than 40 years in the nuclear field, I think that to some extent we are losing a clear lesson learned from the past. is that France was very successful because they standardized the construction and the erection of nuclear power plants with a couple of designs. And to some extent, we are losing that experience. And there are reasons for losing that experience, because nobody is building so many nuclear power plants in the same place. That's a fact. But the concept is still there. So maybe we can see some reactions from the speakers. Lick, you want to say something on that?
Yes, well, it's obvious, that standardization is good for the nuclear industry. It's good for the economics first. It's very clear. And it's good also for safety. I'm convinced, that if we have standardized type of designs, it's much better, in case of incident or in case of problems, and return of experience. So how to achieve this? Unfortunately, I don't think it's feasible to have one authority, international authority, certifying, licensing, the designs for all the others. But perhaps we could get some inspiration from other type of activities like aircraft industry, where at least there is coordination between the safety authorities because they recognize what is done by the others. Okay? And that means that if you have one study, one safety study, or one safety concept, or one safety equipment, which has been validated by another safety authority, then it is recognized and you don't need, to redesign it, to modify it, and you keep the standardization. Okay. So this is the objective of the different initiatives which have been described, like MDAP. I'm personally convinced that we have to go much further. Otherwise, it will slow down, obviously, the development of nuclear, and it will impact the global trust. Nobody can understand that one design is validated on one side of a border and differently on the other side of the border. Okay.
Comment from the panelists on that? Yes, Alexander.
I'm fully agree with Luke. And really, standardization for licensing is one of key approach for reduction of price and increasing of safety. But some years ago, we in agency had a very headacheable experience. We issued a report on legal and institutional aspects of transportable nuclear reactors. Of course, my colleagues, study a lot of different aspects, but finally we understood that really in the world we have no field for licensing of these nuclear power units. Really, we need to prepare new legal basis for transportable nuclear facilities, so on. And now we have similar challenges. I think there is no problem. Challenges for small reactors, small modular reactors, and for reactors, generation 4 reactors. Of course, we started work together with Generation 4 to consider and to develop safety license criteria, safety design criteria for new reactors. But in that case, we should move by different way, not only standardizations. So it's some dialectics maybe, but I think both directions are very important for future safety and future nuclear market. From one hand, really, it's very important for our member states to have standardized approaches for license, and on our hand, we should have some flexibility for licensing of new reactors. Small, medium-size, transportable, and so on.
Many thanks. Takuya Hattori wants to say something on this.
Okay, thank you. Generally speaking, I fully agree for the Mr. Russel's comment on to standardization is very, very important. And we have to learn from the aircraft, the aviation industry also. But practically, when we apply to the nuclear industry for the standardization, I'm not so negative, but it's, from the practical point of view, it's not so. The difficulty, one is the nuclear power station is now, you know about, in the world, 450 was such number. This number is not so big compared with aviation aircraft, maybe 2 orders lower than, and the number itself. And it takes long time. It's maybe more than 10 years or so before starting the planning to the completion of these long term. It's very difficult to keep the technology itself. And time, that is, one is the number, one is the time, and the other factor is the nuclear power plant is located, some of the location, and very much related to the location for the such kind of related matters affected. For example, there's a tsunami or seismic design or flooding design and so on so. And so almost now is almost all the reactors, except the French case, is mostly custom made. And that is not good for the viewpoint of the economical point of view. And we have to, how to standardize. Based on my experience, the component basis might be very easy to apply. And the system basis might be, and hold the station is not so easy. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Sergey.
Я бы добавил, может быть, следующую вещь.
I would add the following thing. I agree with Mr. Takui. Probably we cannot bring up to complete standardization all the NPPs in view, but to standardize the minimum requirements to reactors, I think it is possible. For example, we did it when we used to define the post-Fukushima requirements. As a matter of fact, in effect, all of them are well synchronized. There are some requirements drafted by the European Union that were improved by the Ventra Association of Oversight Bodies. There are some requirements in Russia, in the IAEA. They, in effect, nearly standard. It's a limited set of not requirements, but solutions. If there is a requirement to ensure independent water supply sources or power supply sources, I can do it variously. But the criteria for any watchdog, any oversight agency or any NGO, local community, to see whether these requirements are followed, they may be standardized, these requirements. It's not so hard. Shall we start with it? And I would also say, add an important thing. We said here that the IAEA, OECD, under your management, has been working quite intensively with oversight agencies, supervisory agencies, but it is no less important to draw operators to that. When independent oversight bodies set the requirements is good, but no less important role should be played by the operators who are responsible for nuclear safety and enjoy the unique experience of operation to ensuring practically this safety. This will have what was said by Luke about harmonizing not only standards but also standardization. I think it's quite possible.
Yes, I cannot agree more that industry has a leading role in advancing in all these areas. That's a clear element. But now, we see, that this is an area of further work for everybody. And before coming to the final part, let me ask another question to the panelists quickly. Is that Zafer Alper mentioned Generation 4 reactors. We in my organization we are the technical secretariat of Generation 4 International Forum. I'm afraid that we always idealize the things we don't have yet because they are going to be perfect. The thing is realistic to think that in 20, 30 years, these type of reactors are going to be a clear asset for the development of nuclear power. I would separate that question from the fact that I 100% believe in that it's necessary to develop those technologies. Don't take it wrong. That's very clear. But the thing is, it is possible, that will be the question, it is possible that Generation 4 succeeds if Generation 3 doesn't succeed? is that feasible? Because generation 4 are more complex technologies than the existing ones. So from that point of view, what will be your views? My opinion is that for generation 4 to succeed, we have to make generation 3 successful. Then is when the world will be open for generation 4. Do you agree with that, or there are nuances to that?
I absolutely agree with you. Generation 4 should provide new breakthroughs in principle, but these breakthroughs should be based still on generation 3. I wouldn't wait for the 4th generation, some radically another approach. What should generation 4 resolve? It should resolve a matter of determinant of safety as determinant, not just probability approach. To go to determined approach, based on determinant-based approach of internal safety, not requiring some compensation by passive and ever-increasing systems of safety like passive or active. We sort of compensate here or offset the physical possibility of emergencies with reactors. It is compensated by the ever-growing number of extra safety systems, which results in this safety, allows to go out to an acceptable level of safety, but leads to much higher costs and longer NPV construction periods. This is what Generation 4 provides as first. Second, Generation 4 should provide higher quality conditions for waste disposal to cut down sharply the volume of waste, economically acceptable processing waste, and given current technologies, it should be like deferred solutions with waste disposal that we have currently. And like in France and Russia, waste disposal, some countries just postpone these solutions, like the United States. We do understand that willy-nilly they are still postponed, but these decisions they'll have to make sooner or later. And G4 should provide a radically new status of fuel cycle closure. And point 3, less dependence from fuel. We are not that much limited in that currently. We understand that for all our projects, we are well provided with natural uranium, so that whatever we have on hand right now, and we would like to build in the coming years, we can ensure for 100 years of supplies. But if we take a longer perspective, also raw material independence should be given by G4 reactors. But I agree, all this is based on the operating Generation 3 reactors. So G3 plus generation, I believe, absolutely is a commercial project that will operate and to ensure sales in the market for the coming 15 to 20 years, while G4 commercialization is beyond 23 years and will rely on the commercial success of G3. I absolutely agree in that.
First, as an anecdote, I would like to share with our Turkish colleagues the fact that in France, sometimes the best defenders of Generation 4 are the nuclear opponents, because they want to skip the Generation 3 and go directly to the Generation 4. But more seriously speaking, I fully agree with the merits of Generation 4. What is important for me? First, that we continue to work, to have a long-term view on all these R&D activities to develop new designs. That means Generation 4, small and modular reactors, and perhaps new concepts. Second, I cannot imagine this development to be done on a purely national basis. This will require a lot of international cooperation. And when we look, for example, at Super Phoenix, which has been operated in France for years, it was an international project. It was not a purely national project. And last but not the least, as Sergei said, for me there is a complementarity between Generation 3 fleet and Generation 4 fleet, and we have to maintain as long as possible this complementarity.
Well, yes, I think this is very clear. Generation 3 is what can help our societies today, but nuclear technology is not stopped there. It continues developing new areas which can continue with making reactors more safe, more effective, more competitive, and I think that this will be in the benefit of our societies. Well, I think this can complete the part of the debate between the different speakers. But before thanking them, there is another area now which could be interesting because we are asking your participation, the participation of all of you through a voting system that we have here. I'm not sure that I know very well how it works, but I think it works. So if nobody tells us the opposite, let me tell you that my idea is that there will be 3 questions, and we have to respond to each one independently, of course, with pushing 1, 2, or in 2 cases even 3, depending on what is your opinion, after I say the signal of pushing. The first question is, what do you think personally, each of you, about what is going to be the evolution of the share of nuclear energy in the global energy balance to 2030, almost 2 decades from now? One is that will remain more or less as it is today, about 15% of the electricity. The second is will increase significantly. There will be a clear increase in nuclear energy in the global balance. And the third one is that, or the number 3, is that it will be reduced. So think for a moment on that and push for the response that you think is the more appropriate. No, I see something moving on the screen, so this means that it's counting. Okay. Well, I have the impression that this voting is not very accurate, but maybe we can clean with the green button, I guess, right? We can clean this. Yes, and please do it again with the same question. 1 for remain, 2 for will increase, and 3 for will be reduced. Well, I don't know if somebody's controlling the computers. People think that computers is totally intelligent, they know what to do and all that, and my experience is that this is not true. The computer just do what you ask them to do. But now it counts again, so let's see now the result. Okay, so this seems that the first one was just an automatic response, but now we see that most of the people think that 60% think that there will be an increase on nuclear power, that the condition which exists in the world today and all the things that have been discussed will contribute to make nuclear power more significant. There are, 30% of the people who think that will remain as it is today because new reactors will be constructed, but some other will be decommissioning. So, and a small minority thinks that nuclear power will be reduced. So many thanks for that. Now you can clean your counter. And let's come to the second question. Thinking about potential customers for nuclear power plants in new projects, what do you think is the most attractive feature they will be looking at? One is for safety systems, 2 is for the cost of electricity production, and 3 is for the comprehensive proposal for all of the life cycle of nuclear power plants. So now please put your opinion on the machine, and as I say, 1 is safety systems, 2 is the cost of electricity production, 3 is a comprehensive proposal for the fuel cycle. Please. Well, I think that also a clear majority is looking for the cost. I think that security, well says, I think it's more safety. I think most probably we all think that the technologies of today could be very safe. So really the technology is already at that level that we need. So maybe cost is a determining factor. And of course, some people is looking for a comprehensive proposal for the whole of the fuel cycle because, you want guarantees that during the very long period of time that you have to live with nuclear power, you will have solutions for everything. So I think that could be very important. So that's very clear. So clean again your machine. And let's come to the final question, which has only 2 alternatives. Is taking into account how politics can influence nuclear power. Number 1 is if you think that when you have the resources to build nuclear power and the public is in favor of that, the political influence will be minimal. So really the society will go in that direction. The second one is that in spite of having resources and public acceptability, again, the politics will have a tremendous influence on whether a country goes nuclear or not. So please mark one of these 2 options, which I think are difficult options, and depends on, we have many diverse countries. So but in any case, do your best to think about how is the influence of politics. Okay, the counting comes back. Well, I don't know if it's possible to repeat that or not, but in any case, I know it's a difficult question, so I will not insist on that. So let me, we all have to live with politicians and with politic things, which is very important, of course. I think it's very important that our societies are well run and politicians have a role to play there. Well, now let's come to the final part. And let me say that we have had the opportunity of looking at nuclear power from many points of view, and that thanks to the speakers, we have seen many factors which are influencing nuclear power. I'm not going to reflect all of them because it is a long list, and as I said before, I think there are very few human activities, especially industrial activities, which have so many factors having an influence on that. And also it's a very long-term issue, nuclear power. Everything you do, it takes a long time, and even to undo things takes a long time. So when a country starts a nuclear program, it has a commitment for more than 100 years, in fact. So I think from that, and taking into account also the importance of nuclear safety, the importance of the financing, of the cost and the technology and the human resources, and all of that makes nuclear power a very special industry. But I have seen here also that industry is determined to serve the society, giving an alternative which can help to resolve the main problems that our society have in order to have enough energy for developing the welfare of the societies, as I say, for the economical and social development, which is very important. So that commitment is very important, and also the commitment of the governments. So I'm sure that nuclear power will continue being able to deliver an important part of the electricity that our societies need. So now I think it is very important to thank, first of all, to Rosatom and to the Director General, Sergei Kiriyenko, for the leadership in organizing ATOMEXPO in 2014, again, which is a very successful gathering of industries and governments in order to discuss how to continue improving nuclear power. I think this leading role is very well appreciated by everybody, as well as the organization and the hospitality. Let me thank also to the many people who has contributed to organize this session. For example, Sergei Novikov and Galina Lusmanova and other people working with them. And this has been very helpful to me in order to prepare this session. But as always, there are important actors here. Before thanking the speakers, let me thank you all for participating and for coming to this session. This is what is very important, that you have had interest in coming and you have dedicated to time to listening to the speakers. And also I would like to thank all the speakers. That was a very high-level representation of many important institutions in the world for the comments they have made. In my experience, I think I have to say that they have brought up the main issues which really have to be taken into account with considering nuclear power. And this is what is very important, is that we know what the societies need, we know how industries can evolve and what they can do. We know that they have a clear commitment in order to resolve one by one all the problems which appear and all the challenges. Nuclear power has to live, as I said, with many factors, including, for example, the impact in the public opinion of accidents like Fukushima. We have seen that still this is not resolved, the impact of Fukushima. In many countries, this is being overcome, but still in Japan there are many difficulties, and we give our collaboration to Japan in order to overcome that. But I think we think, and it has been very clearly indicated here, that nuclear energy can have a very important contribution to the security of supply of our societies, and especially now, independent of what you think of whether climate change is happening or not, or whether if it is happening is coming from human action, it is clear to me that it is not prudent to continue increasing the percentage of CO2 in the atmosphere. That cannot be good. So I think it's very important, as I say, independent of what you think of climate change, to help our societies reducing the emissions of CO2, which come majority from the energy sector. So nuclear can deliver there a clear value to our societies. But let me finish that one of, or I would say, the most important characteristic of nuclear power that I've been mentioning in many occasions is that it's based on human knowledge. It's not based on resources. The role of uranium is very, very limited. As you know, at the end, the cost of uranium itself, not the fuel, which has other technologies, but it's only 5% of the cost of the kilowatt hour. It's really science and technology which allows the society to benefit from the energy that uranium and other elements could have for the society. So the human factor is the essential element. So research in science and the development of the technology is crucial in order to maintain this source of energy. So I encourage all of you to continue working in the nuclear sector, because nuclear energy is human people. So I think from that point of view, nuclear energy fits very well with what I think is the future of our societies. Our societies have to be based on knowledge. The knowledge economy is the future of our societies for the benefit of all. And I think nuclear energy can be a very important element in that knowledge society. So from that point of view, let me thank again to Rosatom and to all the participants and to all of you for collaborating to this discussion. And I wish you a very good trip back to your homes in the coming days. Thank you.